So many games coming out in October, including one that you, Christian, got early hands-on with, and you're finally able to talk about. Alan Wake 2.
I've been so excited for this episode, friends, since I got hands-on with Alan Wake 2 in Los Angeles. I think I talked about it when I talked about my hands-on with Spider-Man 2. Dear Sony, right now I'm only talking about my hands-on with Spider-Man 2. That's all I'm talking about. On that show, I think I talked about coming away from it being like, well, there's already too many games, but I just played another all-time great. This is going to be a definite game of the year contender just from what I saw these 3 to 4 hours with Spider-Man 2. This game's going to be incredible. I'm so excited. And then I think it was, I forget if it was literal or just the emotional next day. I played Alan Wake 2, and now talking about it to you all, guys, I know it's a wild year. There's already been too many games, and we named 4 remasters that any year would be the best game of the year.
Yeah.
Of the year is what we need to add to the end of that.
Too many of the best games of all time.
Alan Wake 2 is real good, y'all. It's real good. So aside from just heaping praise on it, I will also explain the game a little bit. I played about 4 hours of Alan Wake 2. I was playing on a PC build with the PlayStation 5 controller. I think they also had some console builds up, but I did not play a console build. I got to play as Saga, the new protagonist, and also as Alan. And this game takes place almost lockstep real time from how long it's been since Alan Wake. Alan Wake, very broad. Alan Wake 1, maybe New Nightmare. Alan Wake universe spoilers that I'm about to say. Alan Wake's been trapped in the dark place. Alan Wake has the events of Alan. This is a sequel. These things have happened, and it's been 13 years, which I think is awesome. I don't think that stories need to do that. I don't think they need to represent the real-time change it's been between games. Like, I don't think, The Last of Us 3 or whenever it comes out needs to reflect how many years it took to make. I don't think stories need that, but I think it's very cool that Alan Wake is doing that, and they're also bringing back the talent from Alan Wake. It is same actor, same mocap, same voice. It's like those same folks have all kind of like how some of the Disney shows have done this, right? They bring back the actor and it's the same amount of time that's passed and all of that stuff happened. And so Alan Wake 2 is taking place all these years forward. And since then, we've had Control, and Remedy has talked about their Remedy universe and how everything's connected. And just in playing this hands-on, you started to see how this world is connected to Control. And Control, one of my favorite games of all time. And
It's
I
an
thought
amazing game.
it's so good. And the Alan Wake
Yeah.
DLC I thought was really incredible and really smart. And so you're seeing pieces of that reaching into this world, which I think is done in a very, from what they've shown and what I've seen, very smart and very, not like wink and nod, not like how South Park made fun of the Family Guy, where it was like, you just reference things and that's supposed to make us clap. Like, that's not enough. It's like, oh no, there is a world here and it's all connected. And, we mentioned auteurs before. I think in people like, Ted Price or Neil Druckmann or Cory Barlog, I think Sam Lake is one of those people.
Oh, yeah.
And what he's been doing
Yep.
at Remedy. Literally the face of games you've played. As Max Payne's face for so long. And Alan Wake 2 is telling this moody, dark, interesting story that, while not mechanically the same as Eternal Darkness, it reminds me a lot of Eternal Darkness in terms
Oh,
of
that's great.
keeping me, the player, on my toes and confused, but in a good way, where I feel like as Saga investigating this thing, she can't know what to believe or what's real. And she hears these fantastical rumors about what's happening in the town and what's going on. And it's all a little trippy. Or when you're Alan and you're in the dark place and you're investigating and the reality shifts in front of you because you've rewritten the scene, because the book you wrote came to life and you're trying to figure all of this out. I feel like your avatar on screen is, through the looking glass, and you as the player are also experiencing that with them. And so the notes I kept writing down was like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but I freaking love it. Like I don't think I'm supposed to know what I'm doing right now.
Well, so what does that mean exactly? Like,
So I'll be vague because I don't want to spoil the sequence. So I was playing as Alan, and you're investigating this murder that happened to try to figure out clues about what's happening between getting you out of the dark place and getting back into the real world as things that you're writing have meshed across the two and your stories are coming true. And so in investigating it, you'll go to a place and see what happened there in one version, but then you've picked up clues about something, a different version of events happening in that same space. And you remember, like, oh, this isn't where it happened. Before they got here, they actually all met in the lobby and then they came here. But what if they met here instead? That's a great story. And you kind of create this world and it changes what you just saw and what happened. And you're like, wait, was the person in room 106 or 160?
wait, that's what the narrative is doing, or that's what you, the player, are
That's
doing?
what the narrative's doing while you, the player, are doing it. So you'll walk
Okay.
to 106, open it, fall through a door, and it's like things that video games would normally tell you is wrong. Like it's not right. I can't be here. This isn't what I'm supposed to do. And then the game will say, well, you can't be here because this isn't right. And that's like, that's exactly what I just said. What am I supposed to do? And then it's like, oh, well, I can change it. I can fundamentally
Oh, wow.
change what I'm seeing and what I'm playing by reanalyzing as Saga, kind of analyzing the clues, or as Alan going back into your writer's room and writing it in a way that actually makes sense, or it actually brings it together.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. So
That's how I felt.
So, but you're discovering this process that is linear, or you as the player are making decisions that then reorder things dynamically in the game world?
Great questions. And I should say I was dropped in, 3 or 4 hours into the game, which I think for a game like Spider-Man 2 is very easy to be dropped 4 hours into a game and you know what you're doing. To be dropped that far into Alan Wake 2, I did wish I had some of that tutorializing, and I wish I knew some of the mechanics because it is a complex game. I don't think this is, well, it's not open world. I think our experiences will all be largely the same. We might solve puzzles in a slightly different order, but this changing of worlds, it's not, oh, I figured out this thing and Jeff and Vic, you all aren't going to do that. You're going to do it this other way. To me, it seems more akin, mechanically different, but I think in this way it's similar to Portal, where there's one way to solve it, but when you see it come together, you're like, oh, I bet they didn't think that I could do this. And so in Alan Wake 2, there are moments where you're trying to find, in this moment as Alan, try to find this killer. And you're walking around this, I think it was a hotel or an apartment building. And you go to where the game, via you or your narration or your clues that you found, tell you to go. But when you get there, it's wrong. And I think so often in games like old God of War, right? You go and you turn left and it's a dead end. You're like, well, this clearly isn't the way I'm supposed to go. So I'm going to turn right. And then you turn right and you fight Medusa and and that's the way you're supposed to go. And in Alan Wake, again, from what I played, those wrong turns weren't wrong. It just required you to either go find something else that would then open that back up, or go into your writer's room, which you can jump back into. It's like in your head, and look at the story you've written. So you have this, murder board out, and you have pieces of scenes that then you can reorder that will change them. So you're looking at the ballroom, and it's like, this is where they met. That makes sense. They'd come into the ballroom to all meet before they go on their killing spree. So you put like, they met in the ballroom. And then the ballroom transforms in front of you to be, again, I'm generalizing here, but like the chairs were all in a circle because that's where they met. And you walk around and you look and it's like, well, no, there's nothing here. Well, this couldn't have been where they met. Well, then where did they meet? And so I'm like, I don't know, where did they meet? I have no clue where they met. And so you kind of explore the space, again, I think in an intentional way to make you feel uneasy. And you find out that like, oh, well, their coats are all here. So clearly they met here first. Okay, so if they met here, you go back into your writer's room and you say they met in the lobby.
Wait. So I'm sorry. I just want to be I'm kind of hard time grokking this. when you
Same.
keep saying, when you're describing an inner monologue, is it an inner monologue in Max Payne's head or
Alan
you, the
Wake's.
player's head?
Alan,
Excuse me,
it's
not Max
Yeah.
Payne. Sorry, Alan Wake.
it's
Pardon me.
in
You know what I'm saying?
Alan. Yes.
Is it being spoken by the voice actor in the
Yes.
game,
Or
is it
is it Sam
Christian?
Lake's head?
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
So you
all
are
Sam
being
Lake said.
stepped through this process of the character in narrative game
Yes.
world telling you, oh, that's not right. You're not, because I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying. Is you Christian thinking or the
Got it.
character thinking?
So oftentimes in my playthrough, they were happening at the same time. You know, I was having the me playing aha
Right.
moment of this. There's nothing to do here. This isn't right. And then Alan would come in and say, well, there's no way that this could be right. But not every time. Sometimes it would require me to just go back into my space or explore this, go back into the writer's room and try reordering scenes, or to explore, it's not the real world because you're in the dark place, but like explore the real world more to find out things that are next. But Alan, much like the first game, and even in Control, you know, there is an internal dialogue. The character is talking and
Yeah.
explaining what
This
they
sounds
see.
a lot more like Control to me than the first Alan Wake. And Control, I feel like, was the most sophisticated game play that Remedy had made up to that point. They'd taken all their great narrative lessons and their trippy storytelling, but they'd really honed in on just beautiful game design. And I feel like Alan Wake 2 is more like Control almost than it is. I don't know though. I've only seen the demos, and I was at Summer Game Fest. Um, I didn't get any hands on, but I feel like it's more like Control than it is the first Alan Wake.
I think Alan Wake 2, if it pulls off what it's trying to pull off, and for what I saw from 4 hours of, or what I played in these 4 hours, is the tip of Remedy's genius. It is all of the things coming together, because it's definitely
Okay.
not as action heavy as Control. It is an
Right.
over the shoulder, claustrophobic Resident Evil 4 style camera that you're exploring this space, but not even as much combat, again, in the part that I played, as much combat as what Resident Evil 4 has. And after our playthrough, we had dev interviews, and Sam Lake talked about that. He's like, one of the critiques we saw with the first Alan Wake, and looking back on it all these years later, is that while the combat was cool, flashlight gun, and you still do that in this game, there was too much of it, and it didn't change, it didn't evolve as a player. And I think he called out God of War as like, that whole game is incredible, and you're getting new skills and new tools to use. In Alan Wake, we didn't do that. So we wanted to
Right.
find ways to make the combat feel engaging and fun, but know that there's other ways that we can design a game that's not relying on you doing that for 30 hours or whatever it was. So they've
Right,
kind of pulled
right.
some of that back, and it's more exploration and not even puzzle solving. So it's like Control in terms of Jesse, talking and figuring things out. There are moments in Control where Vic, did you finish Control?
Yeah, I did, and I've also gone back to play it a bunch of times, but like from the middle of a game, because I played it on I don't even remember what system I beat it on, but I beat it on one system, but I didn't beat it on PC. And of course, I tested out on the Steam Deck, or I tested out on
Yeah.
the PCs that I review, because it's such a gorgeous game, and it's a power hog on PC as well. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing every time I load it up. Like I have a save game, but it's like, wow, this is confusing. There's so many complex systems, and the story is so weird. So I totally feel your pain being dropped 4 hours into Alan Wake 2.
And
I know
so-
exactly what you're saying right there.
Not to spoil the thing, 'cause I think it's one of the best moments in gaming, but I will say a name of a mission in Control that I think for folks who have played Control will maybe understand how I'm perhaps doing a poor job explaining the mind scrambling that Alan Wake 2 is, I think intentionally. In Control, there's a mission called the Ashtray Maze. And as Jessie finds her way into it, you feel like you're stumbling, but you're not.
yeah.
The game is very much guiding you into this experience, but it is so unlike anything else you've played, as things are changing and shifting around you. And Jessie's confused as the character, and I think she is verbalizing what I was feeling, unlike Aloy in Horizon. Love those games. Aloy is
Yep.
rarely saying what I'm feeling. Aloy is often
Right.
just being like, "It sure is pretty down here." And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but that's not what I'm experiencing. And I think Jessie in Control was often monologuing what I was feeling, and I think more so Alan and Saga and Alan Wake 2 are doing that. So Jeff, maybe that was part of it, where it's like we were both feeling that way, but then Alan would kind of prompt you to, well, this can't be right. I got to go back and investigate. What if I change this scene? And then so you go in. Go ahead.
That's so meta. It's amazing. It's a little Kojima like, it's like this. There's an awareness that this is gameplay, and we're going to write to that. Sam's a bloody genius. He's so cool.
I don't know.
What I was reminded of was Immortality, the game Immortality, but maybe I'm way off. Is does it play like a puzzle? Because you just said it's not a puzzle, which then really threw me for a loop.
I mean, it's a third-person game that there are puzzles in it. It's not.
But like the reconstruction
Witness.
of that stuff isn't a puzzle. It's more like experiencing just a story, flow.
You do have to get it right, but you're not sitting there again. I don't know. I wrote up my feelings too on my blog, which you can find at christianspicer.com. That went live right when the embargo broke, and I wrote up like, if they can pull off what it looks like they're trying to pull off, I think this could be an all-time great. If not, I think it'll be a cult
the video
classic.
stuff?
Incredible.
How's the live action stuff?
NVIDIA, yeah, the video stuff is great. The DLS NVIDIA stuff wasn't in the build that I played. But let me try to answer this question, Jeff. It is a puzzle in the sense that you have to get the right pieces of the story in the right places to progress, but it doesn't feel like that moment isn't what I would call a puzzle, because the game also has straight up puzzles in it, that are what other games would do as a mini game. But the constructing the scene or figuring out the pieces, it's like, yes, it's a puzzle, but you're kind of being guided through it. And so it's kind of trippy to then see it reflect on screen as you lay it out in front of you. Again, I think Eternal Darkness did some of that as well, where you'd come out of it and be like, that's not what happened. That can't be what happened. And you, the player, are thinking that. And then the game would cut to a save corrupted screen, and you're freaking out, and then you come back into it. Last little bit on Alan Wake, as I hopefully didn't confuse too many people. But the puzzles, this is why I wanted to be clear about the puzzles. The puzzles themselves, again, if they can pull it off throughout the course of the game, I think are brilliant, because so much of this game seems to be trusting the player. So often I feel like in games you come across a safe in a room, and it's like, I don't know the code for the safe. Well, I bet someone wrote
be on a wall right behind me.
You turn around and you look, and it's like on the wall, it's like, Vic, I changed the safe code. Now it's 242417. Don't tell anyone. Erase this when you've read it. It's not erasing, you do it. And what I played in Alan Wake 2, it would be like, here's the safe. Well, there's probably a code somewhere in the room, and then you find a piece of paper that's like, the code's not here, you idiot. Why would I leave the code? You know what the code is anyway. Don't pretend you didn't know. And then there's like a paragraph about how they went to a pizza place together last weekend. And you're like, wait, what? And then you explore the space more, and there's like, you find a pizza box. And then on that pizza box, this isn't the exact example. There's like a tic-tac-toe board. And you're like, oh, I see. It's the tic-tac-toe. I go enter that. No, there's like 4 little steps you jump through, because you have to actually solve the puzzle to solve the code, which again, I think if it works and it's on that knife's edge of cool before frustrating, it's brilliant. But if it doesn't work, it's very frustrating, because you're like, just tell me the stinking code. And I feel like a lot of the game is trying to walk that line. I apologize if I've done a poor job explaining, but
I don't mean this as
my
a knock
head's in a
against you, but I feel
scramble.
like I have less of an understanding of what to expect from this game than I
Well,
did
did you
before we
play?
started.
Did you play Alan Wake 1?
I did, but Alan Wake 1's basically a shooter.
It's an action game, pretty much, right? An action horror game.
Yeah, I loved Alan Wake 1, but I mean, I what I wanted out of that game, when they announced it, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody is making a Stephen King novel as a video game. Oh my gosh. And then what we got was a really cool but pretty straightforward action adventure game. And I was like, where was all that cool, like, solve the mystery stuff? So it sounds like they've really come back to that, which is awesome. And I'm intrigued by it, but I have been in the ramp up to Alan Wake 2. Just my personal taste is that I've been a little turned off by how survival horror-y it has seemed to be, or that they're using that descriptor. And I'm not a person that like rushes out to play the next huge survival horror game. It's just not what I enjoy personally. So I have been a little bit bummed, because I wanted it to be cool and eerie and spooky, but not, survival horror. Oh my God, there's something running after me. I only have 2 bullets. That is not a tension that I seek out when I play. So
Right.
how much of that is in what you've played, Christian?
From what I've played, I would call it a psychological thriller and not survival horror.
That's cool.
Cool.
Is it possible for me to dump all my shotgun ammo into a wall and then not have any? Sure. But I didn't do that because why would I shoot it into a wall? And I wasn't doing like the RE resource management before going into a fight or anything like that. It felt trippy, intense, and disturbing in a way of something clearly creepy and evil is going on. The saga stuff in the real world is, these occult killings that are happening, and it's like True Detective more so than Resident Evil, and I think it's nailing those vibes. And as the gameplay, it's a third person action game, but with all the stuff that hopefully our listeners can grok the idea of, like the ashtray maze or some of the trippier moments of Control where
I
it
think
purposefully dumps you on your head.
People should be excited, a post confidence of the success of Control, like a team that made Control is working on their next game. That should be enough, whether it's a sequel or not. That should be enough. Like what those guys achieved with Control was so groundbreaking and so seminal. That was their best game, and I'm hoping that this now is their best game.
And
it's
it's going to
wild,
have
like-
DLSS 3.5.
Well, I'm in,
Cool.
I'm in for that, Christian.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that like after Quantum Break, I felt like Quantum Break was like the low point for Remedy, and after that,
Yeah.
they were just like bangers. It's just like going for it, and obviously there's not that many games after that, but it feels like they learned a lot of lessons from Quantum Break and didn't repeat any of the missteps. It really bounced back.
Man, I want these guys to make a Doctor Strange game. I want Remedy to have
That'd
the
be cool.
Doctor Strange license and make, an Insomniac quality Doctor Strange experience. That would be
Well, it
incredible.
sounds like they're only interested in playing in their own sandbox. Like the Control 2 is coming after Mac after.
I'm
Alan
cool
Wake
with
2.
that. I'm
Yeah.
cool with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I like I said, I think it's either going to be an all-time fave and at worst a cult hit, and it's going to require a bunch of things to come together because there's also a mechanic of Alan has the clicker and you can suck light from one area and use it to bring light to another, and that changes the scene. A la, I'm trying to think, is that Ratchet and Clank where you can hot swap the area with each other, and so that can solve puzzles in addition to the combat. And I cannot wait to play more. And I was blown away by what I played, but also left with more questions and wanting. And
You and
some
me
games, some games you play the demo and you're like, I
And
know
me.
exactly what it's going to be.